Before we start, I need to mention that this is a general information for information purposes. If you have a particular question, do reach out to us. We'll be very happily to we'll very happily answer all your questions. However, this is for information and for education purposes only. Do not take that as advice for your particular case, because clearly we do not know that. These are the 7 steps that we go through when we establish a crypto company or a Web3 company in the UAE. And we will go through each step one by one. We will spend 5 to 10 minutes on each step. If you have questions, you can ask questions. The Q&A panel should be available. And also, if you have questions that you think of tomorrow, feel free to mail us. We'll answer those questions for you. Defining the business model. So step number 1, before you start establishing anything, incorporating anything, spending money on regulatory fees or corporate services providers, you need to define what is it that you're planning to do. Why is that required? Because there are several types of free zones available, there are several types of onshore jurisdictions available, various regulators available, which we'll go through the later in the presentation. But it is very, very important to define your business model. What is it that you're planning to do? What are your activities? Who is your target market? Why is target market important? It's important for the tax implications. What are the regulatory requirements that you have to follow if you were to establish this business? And of course, the timelines. Let's say your business is already operational and you launched a token yesterday. Now is not the time. Now it's probably a little bit late to start thinking how to structure that properly. You need to think about that ahead of time. Budgets available. Some jurisdictions are expensive, some jurisdictions are less expensive. So you need to understand what is it that you're planning to achieve and whether it will fit your budget. We have a lot of requests coming in for regulatory licenses from central bank, from VARA, and from other regulators. But once they understand the timelines and the budgets required, people really get a cold shower sort of reaction. They did not expect that it will be that expensive, that it will be that time consuming, and that it will be that sort of labor intensive as well. It is a financial or virtual assets regulatory licenses are quite time consuming and expenses consuming. And of course, you need to think about the tax implications. UAE is wonderful when it comes to taxation, very low corporate tax and 0 personal tax. But you have to structure your business correctly in order to take advantage of that. Otherwise, you might end up in a situation where you don't have the access to those really good benefits. And the first thing is to, of course, to determine whether your activity is a regulated activity or unregulated activity. Because performing a regulated activity without correct licenses will result in fines, penalties, and there's even criminal liability for founders, directors, and the shareholders. So you need to be very, very careful with that. Just recently, a couple of months ago, we all saw headlines that VARA, which is a Dubai regulator, has fined 7 companies that are performing regulated activity without being regulated. And fining is the first step. Then there will, if they continue performing unregulated activity, there will be more steps that the regulator will take. And we've spoken to them, and they confirmed that is the idea. First, you get the fine to warn a company not to do that, and then you get more and more severe consequences. So what are regulated activities? In the UAE, anything to do with services provided in area of virtual assets towards other people, that we call them VASP services. These are regulated activity. For example, a cryptocurrency exchange would be a regulated activity. An OTC desk will be a regulated activity. We just received a request. We actually received a lot of requests when somebody wants to open a business where people come in with bags of cash and in return they receive crypto. That is not even a regulated activity. This is a full-on illegal activity, breaking all sorts of AML laws of the central bank. So, don't do that. Or if you're planning to do that, don't call us. And also the financial services, for example, payments, remittances, stored asset value services. So these are financial services. So all of that is regulated. So think about that. Think about it. If you're planning to use or have access or have control over third-party funds, that is a regulated activity for sure. Then unregulated activities, for example, DevCos, OpCos, for a DAO, the very, very, UAE is a wonderful jurisdiction for such type of businesses. Also advisory services in the Web3, let's say, or software technology development, all of that is unregulated. So basically where you don't have access to people's funds and people's assets, that is mainly unregulated activities. We support a lot of DeFi projects. Most of our clients are actually in that DeFi space, non-custodial wallet space, launching tokens. So that in the UAE would be unregulated activity, but it is not advisable to launch those businesses in the UAE. There are much better Web3 structures that can be designed. And you will have multiple entities, let's say an OpCo or DevCo in the UAE, in a very, very friendly economic free zone, or and then the actual wrapper for your DAO or wrapper for your DeFi project can be in other jurisdictions. So combining jurisdictions, or we call it jurisdictional arbitrage, is very, very beneficial for founders to optimize taxes and to leverage the available regulatory regimes. We have a tip. Make sure that the documents explaining your business model are clear for you. They have enough details. For example, if you're planning to run a regulated business, you absolutely have to detail who will be the responsible personnel, who will be within the business, within the definition of the regulations, who will be anti-AML officer, who will be the compliance officer, who is the director. So that is very, very important to define all of that. Because if you are ambiguous about your business plan, how would the regulator understand that in order to support you with your application? Or if you have gaps in your business plan, that shows that you're not ready to approach a regulator and you're not ready to engage in this licensing regime, because it is very complicated and cumbersome. So you need to be as clear as possible. What is it that you have, and have your ducks in the row. That's the number one. That's the number one tip, which is quite logical, but you would think that is, but that's not what we see. And Zainab will cover the regulatory regime. So let's say you have made an assessment of your business case, and it is absolutely certain that you fall under a certain regulatory regime. The beautiful thing in the UAE, we have 5 virtual asset services regulators. We have federal, we have financial free zones, and of course the emirate level jurisdictions. And Zainab will take us through all of that.
The UAE has a very multi-layered legal and regulatory structures. This include the combinations of different federal laws, emirate level laws, as well as multiple regulators, as Irina has already mentioned. So at the federal level, we have the central bank, which is responsible for regulating the country's monetary policy, payment systems. Its primary focus is ensuring that there is stability and integrity of payment mechanisms. So this includes different digital currencies, like stablecoins as well, and specifically those that are backed by the dirham. Those specifically fall under central bank's purview, their issuance as well. The main primary federal regulator in the UAE is the SCA, formerly was known as ESCA. The SCA stands for the Securities and Commodities Authority. This authority regulates and supervises the UAE's financial markets. This includes the stock markets, the Dubai Financial Market, the Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange. The SCA also oversees virtual assets and cryptocurrencies across the UAE. So except for the financial free zones and the Emirate of Dubai, the SCA is the regulatory authority for majority of the UAE. I will now move on to speaking about the financial free zones. In the UAE, currently we have two financial free zones. So the Dubai International Financial Center and then the Abu Dhabi Global Market. These free zones, they're particularly attractive due to their own regulatory frameworks. Both of these financial free zones, they operate under a common law framework. This stems from English law, and these free zones, they have established their own separate legal systems, their own laws, and all the proceedings are conducted in English, specifically in the courts as well. Now, the Abu Dhabi Global Market, it's known for its crypto-friendly regulations. It was one of the first jurisdictions in the region to have their own crypto laws back in 2018. It is regulated by the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, the FSRA. On the other hand, we have the Dubai International Financial Center, which is regulated by the Dubai Financial Services Authority, the DFSA. They also have their own virtual assets framework. They recently introduced their own digital assets law, which has come into force last year. Finally, moving on to the Dubai's own regulatory authority. Dubai has Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority. It governs all virtual asset related activities within the Emirate of Dubai. So excluding the IFC because that's a financial free zone like we discussed. So WARA has developed its own comprehensive set of regulations, guidelines, rule books, which entities are required to follow in order to operate within Dubai's virtual asset ecosystem.
When you're looking to pick the regulatory regime, how would you go about it, Zainab? So there are 5 regulators. Why would I go with one and not the other one?
There are different factors. It really depends on the type of project that you have, the kind of business model that you have, the level of compliance that you have to adhere to, and it also depends on the costs. I think costs are one of the main factors that we do focus on when selecting a jurisdiction.
We just had a really good question coming in. What about DIFC? Why is DIFC not on this slide?
It is on the slide of the financial free zones. It's right there.
Yeah. No, the answer is because it's not a financial regulator. That is why it's not on the side, because DMCC is a free zone. It's not a financial regulator. And that is something that people get confused. Thank you so much for this question. It's a wonderful question. People get confused between the regulators and the free zones. So, and we will cover that later, but that's a very good question. Why DMCC is not here? Because DMCC is not a regulator. It's a free zone. It's an economic free zone. Unless you have a regulatory license from any of these 5 entities, you are not regulated. You don't have a virtual services. You don't have a VASP license or a financial license. You basically just incorporated a company, but you haven't gone to the next step.
So as a pro tip, it's really important to, like Irina's already mentioned, to map out your business activities against the right regulatory regime. It's really important in ensuring compliance and ensuring a streamlined process when you're setting up your company. This helps you avoid different costly delays where either you have to go down a route where you have to go into a different free zone for incorporation or go to a different and fall under a different regulator.
After you've built your business plan, and you've determined whether you regulated business or not, and under which regulator, the next step would be to start incorporating a company. Ala, do you want to take us through the company incorporation process?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So, speaking about company incorporation, as Irina and Zainab mentioned before, the previous steps are extremely important, and the company incorporation, as you can see on our in our presentation, is step number 3, not the step number 1, like a lot of our clients think, because the most common mistake that we see with our clients when they come to the UAE for the first time, they don't know anything about the regulations here. They apply the typical approach. They just go to the free zone they were recommended. They incorporate the company. They get their business license, and then at some point they realize that they are a regulated business and they need to obtain a license, or they can't even incorporate the company because they're a regulated business, and the free zone just simply rejects their application. So that's why the company incorporation is step number 3, because based on what is your business activity, so after you determined your business model, after you analyzed all the regulatory regimes available in the UAE, then you can understand where to incorporate your company. And it is extremely important, especially for regulated businesses. For example, if you go to ADGM and you want to set up a crypto exchange, for certain reasons, it may not be the best jurisdiction within the UAE for you. In comparison, for example, with Dubai, where there is local specifically tailored to virtual asset activities regulator, which is called WARA, and my colleagues already mentioned that, which will be able to issue that kind of license to you. So when we speak about company incorporation, it's just a business setup. So it's where you go and obtain a business license. What you need as a client, as a founder, or as a lawyer supporting that client, what you need to know about the UAE is that here we have a business license, or it also called a trade license, but it's not actually a license. It's simply a business permit, a certificate of registration or incorporation, wherever these documents can be called in different jurisdictions. So it's simply a permit which allows your company to carry out business. It has nothing to do with the virtual asset activities or any other specific type of activities. So it's just a permit to carry out business activity and earn certain income. And after that, depending if your business is either regulated or unregulated, you will need to either obtain, or you can just get your trade license and start your operations. But if you are a regulated business, and we will tell more about which activities are actually regulated in terms of virtual assets, in this case, you will need to apply for trade license, but you will not be able to obtain it before you get your license from the certain regulator which oversees your business activity, depending on the again on the location where your company is set up. If it's Dubai, there will be local regulator WARA. If it's let's say Sharjah, your company will fall under federal regulation purview.
And I guess that can be compared with a company house in the UK. If you want to form a company in the UK, you go to a company house and you get your set of company documents. This is what it is, literally incorporation of a company and getting that set of documents. It is called trade license or business license, and people just sell it as a license. And we had a lot of clients who actually bought a license for a crypto company, which was literally just a company incorporated, which takes 3 days. And they paid, $50,000, $60,000 for it. And then when they tried to open a bank account or carry out OTC business or other sort of virtual assets activity, that was not possible because you are not a licensed entity to do that. You're just an entity. And we see that all the time. And I completely agree with you. A lot of our clients just land in Dubai, go open whatever company they were advised or marketed to them, most common, whatever was marketed to you on social media or through not so honest corporate services providers. They incorporate this entity and then they're stuck. They cannot carry out certain activities because if you want to be regulated by a certain regulator, don't want to, but if you have to be regulated by a certain regulator, your company needs to be established in a certain jurisdiction and in a certain way, which will cover that as well.
Also, going back to the DMCC, so DMCC is economic free zone, which actually can just issue your business license. This is not a regulator which can issue your regulatory license. So from DMCC, you can only register your company there and get your corporate documents. That's it. If we know that we are regulated or unregulated entity, we are at this stage where our business activity are clear. We still need to understand where to incorporate the company. And in the UAE, we have so many jurisdictions, which can offer different options for you to set up your company. So we structure them in in three sections. So these are economic free zones where you actually incorporate a company. These are certain ecosystems which offer you business setup, sometimes access to investors, sometimes they assist you with, in most cases, they assist you with visa and residency permits. Sometimes they help you to set up a bank account. So these are the simply locations which offer a business setup and other services associated with it. The next is financial free zones. As Zainab mentioned, these are free zones which operate under their own frameworks. They are tailored specifically to financial services, so they may not be optimal for a lot of crypto projects, but for those which are specifically focused in payments, asset management, and this kind of financial services activities combined with crypto. And there is one more option for companies which are not focused in targeting the UAE customers, the UAE market. These are offshore free zones where your company can also be set up, but this company will not operate within the UAE. Speaking about economic free zones, we have over 45 different free zones across the country. I believe around 30 of them are just based in Dubai. And for example, if you plan to incorporate your company in Dubai, there are multiple options you can choose between. However, I have to say that a lot of free zones, they still do not offer crypto-related activities. So if you are focused specifically on virtual asset activities, you will still need to consider only those free zones which are working with this type of companies. And among these free zones are DMCC, IFSA, Dubai Internet City, Meydan free zone. So there are multiple free zones. Most of them are based in Dubai, but there are also free zones in other Emirates, like, for example, RAGDAO, RAG Digital Assets Oasis. It is a new free zone which is established in the Emirate of Ras Al Khaimah, and it's specifically tailored to Web3 businesses which are not regulated.
Another thing to think about the free zones, we call them commercial free zones, economic free zones. Each free zone has its own perks and has its own benefits. And you learn that after navigating them for 18 years by now. So Rakes is wonderful if you want to set up a freelance visa. It takes 3 to 5 days. You have a freelancer visa and you can be a photographer in UAE. Probably not a really good case for crypto and Web3 entrepreneurs. DMCC just announced yesterday they're building an entire crypto tower. It's 17 floors dedicated only to crypto and Web3 and AI businesses. What I also like about the free zones, they set up all sorts of marketing bonuses, right? Come and set up with us and you have an access to, let's say, a VC ecosystem. Come and set up with us and you have, let's say, an access to a free office space. So each free zone comes up with their little perks. They're trying to compete with each other, which is great. Competition is wonderful. The more options we have, the better. If you want to set up a company in the UK, that's only one company house you can go to, right? But you pay 100 quid, so you're absolutely fine. There's nothing to compete there, really. Whereas companies in the UAE are a little bit more expensive, but the free zones compete with each other. For example, today they have an offer for this or an offer for that. Javza was the very first free zone set up in the UAE, and everybody thought what a successful project that was, and basically copied it not only within the UAE but worldwide. So Javza was the first free zone, and that scheme was copied across the world very, very successfully. So it was very visionary of the Dubai ruler to set up Javza back in the 80s, right? It was done very so because we have so many options, you have to really, really pick the right one. If you pick the wrong one, sure, you can move to the right one, but it will add time and money and, you know, the bureaucratic paperwork. Also, what I like about the financial free zones, if you've been to ADGM, it's an entire city, right? And what ADGM is now pushing for, they're looking to establish themselves as a stable coin hub. So if you want to launch a stable coin, ADGM is probably your best option, unless it's a UAE dirham-backed stable coin that it's only central bank. And Dubai International Financial Center, DIFC, that's also like a city, right? You go in there, every restaurant in there, every bar in there. And what DIFC is doing great is they're now heavily focusing on AI initiatives. There is an AI center and labs, and they're quite positioning themselves more as an AI angle rather than the crypto or Web3 angle. The center was actually called AI and Web3, and then they took Web3 out and they just called themselves AI. And that for me shows their focus, right? If you're calling yourself an AI center, that means this is your focus. So if you're planning to do AI business or heavily focus on that, maybe DIFC is something for you to look at. And IFSA can be very, very quick and cheerful, but there are pitfalls here that it is located in the Emirate of Dubai, and VARA has the jurisdiction over IFSA companies. So, for example, even if you want to trade your own assets, you will need to receive NOC from VARA, which can take a little bit of time. So you need to plan ahead. But if you want to set up the same company with the same business model in Rakesh, you wouldn't need to do that because VARA has no jurisdiction over Ras Al Khaimah. And this is what we call jurisdictional arbitrage. You need to be very smart in positioning yourself in the right free zone in order to fall either inside or outside of the regulations, depending what is it that you want to do. Be regulated or otherwise. And of course, the tip we have to, of course, mention, work with advisors who understand virtual assets and financial services regime and can guide you. The regulatory side, setting up a company, it's very easy. Anybody can walk into any free zone and open the company. The question is this the right jurisdiction for you? Is this the right company for you? Is this the right activity for you or not? That is, and of course, don't rely on your neighbor who opened a bakery because last year, because setting up a crypto business or setting up a bakery business is completely different. So we are a heavily regulated industry, so we need to be quite mindful of that. We have a couple of questions back about DMCC. So if you have a company in DMCC and you want to open, and you have to get a VARA license for your operations because you're a virtual asset services provider, yes, you need to go and do that. A license from DMCC is not enough to operate as a VASP. Yes, of course, because that license from DFC is not a license. You incorporated a company in DMCC, sorry. You did not get license. So incorporation step number 3, thinking what licenses you need is a step beforehand. And after you had incorporated, then we have the step of applying for regulatory licenses. So you need to plan, then execute. I think that's a little bit logical, but sometimes we see things done the other way around. Do I need an extra license if I already have a mainland license for RWA project? There is no such thing as a main license for RWA project. You have, I suspect, a company incorporated in the mainland with an activity, let's say real world something. I did not know that they had such activity, but let's say they do. You don't have a license. The only time you have a license if it is something issued by VARA, central bank, or Emirates and Security and Commodity Authority. So the answer to that question, most obviously yes. However, it depends. What are you planning to do in RWA project? Are you just building a software? Then it's unregulated business. Or are you planning to issue tokens and trade them? Then it is a regulated business and you need to get it regulated. So when you say, I have a license from mainland, you have a company incorporation in the mainland. You have a trade business license, not a regulatory license. So now the question, do you need to get regulated or not? Depends on what is it that you're planning to do. Where then for Web 4 model, Web 3 and AI? So depending what you, if you want to incorporate a business, which is a Web 4 model, that's the first time I hear about a Web 4 model, which is a Web 3 and AI, but okay. Great to know, because some of our clients are already building Web 5, which is basically completely ownerless, tokenless applications. But that's fine. So depending what are you planning to do in Web 4 model, are you planning to do software activities, depending what are you planning to do there. If it is a regulated activity, then think into DIFC, especially if you have a heavy focus on AI and you need credits to data centers, or you need partnerships with NVIDIA, or you need to purchase every chip and a card, what do you call those AI processing cards, then DIFC could be a good option for you, because they have those partnerships already signed up and lined up. So once you establish your company there, you can access that network of partners and get preferential treatments there. They also give Microsoft Cloud, Google credits, Google Cloud credits, basically whatever an AI business needs, they have lined it up. So it's for you to go and check it if that is the case, and if that really serves your business. I have a trade license and I want to offer tokenized loyalty program. Okay, tokenized loyalty program might fall outside of the regulated business, because the loyalty tokens are not considered to be financial tokens. It's like air miles, right? I fly Emirates, I have enough miles, and I can use it for next time. So, but we really need to look at your business model to say yay or nay. But so far, maybe that is not necessary. Oh, appointed representative. Okay. Appointed representative licenses. Services providers. I don't think, Allah help me out here. So if you're setting up a company, you need to have a shareholder, director, and one thing you need to have, which you don't need to have in any other jurisdiction, is a manager. So there needs to be a manager of a company. So I think that's what you mean by appointed representative, is the manager of a company. It will be very difficult to get anybody to be a manager of your company, because under the UAE law, the manager is responsible for all the legal and illegal activities of the company. So you're running your business and you create all sorts of interesting things. If shit hits the fan, the regulators or the authorities will come to the manager. So I have not seen in my 17, almost 18 years in Dubai, I have not seen an appointed manager, unless it's your cousin that you want to, that you don't like very much. What do you say, Allah?
Yeah, I believe this relates to appointed representatives, or like nominee directors, which is not actually allowed here in the UAE. That's the first. And secondly, the manager will be the person who will be responsible for all the business operations, including maintaining your bank account. And unless it's a person you can trust, we do not recommend to appoint third parties as manager for the company.
Because they'll have access to your bank accounts. The manager is the one actually who applies for the banking applications. So yes, that's a good point. UAE is quite slightly different from other jurisdictions. We need three components. We need shareholders, directors, and a manager. And if you're one person setting up the company, so you will wear three hats. But if it's a larger business, we have shareholders separately, directors separately. Maybe one of the shareholders, more active ones, will be a director, and a manager. Applying for regulatory licenses. Let's go through that very quickly. The process, so you establish the company, you figure out in the beginning your business plan, you figure out that you need to be regulated, and you figure out who is your preferred regulator. You spoke to them, you cleared initial steps that they will actually be happy to regulate you. Then you establish the company in the right place, because certain companies can be regulated only from certain free zones or mainland. Then the next step is to actually start applying for licenses. It can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. If anybody promises you to do it in 2 weeks or 2 months, they have not done it, or they are being a little bit optimistic, or they are not being straightforward with you. 6 to 12 months is the process, because you need to, first of all, you need to submit extensive documentation. You need to have internal ducks in a row with your operational manuals. You need to have all your risk protocols in place, and you need to have your personnel in place. You need to have your anti-money laundering officer or money laundering officer, whichever you prefer. You have to have your personnel ready, and it takes a while to get that. For example, if you're a large business like Bybit, you're already operating throughout the world. Yes, it is easier to come and get the licensing because you already have everything in place. But for them, it took around 2 years. For Bybit, it took 2 years to get regulated because they came with a lot of history, and the regulator need to be very comfortable that that history can be is a good one, not a dodgy one. So key personnel and all the policies will take 6 to 12 months going back and forward. Here's the list of regulated activities. Remember, we talked about the regulated activities and unregulated. Think about touching other people's money, right? Or issuing a stable coin like Tether. Is it backed? Is it not backed? There is a lot of drama around that. So if you're doing anything to do with engaging with other people's money, that will almost certainly be regulated. Issuing NFTs, and which is a picture of a monkey, and then trading those NFTs is a regulated activity as well in the UAE, which I don't agree with, because, you know, if it's a picture of a monkey, it's less risk. However, we all heard of Pump.fund, basically a platform that issues meme coins. Now it is being sued by people who've lost money on it. So even that can be a risky business. The tip: plan your timeline very carefully and ensure your documents are accurate, because if the documents are poor, then the regulator will take every chance to send it back to you, and that 6 to 9 months time frame will be shortened.
Once your company is incorporated, as a shareholder, as a manager, as a director, you do need, as founders and key team members, you need to be based in the UAE. You need to get a residence permit and Emirates ID. This will help you in opening bank accounts and conducting any operational activities within the UAE. So this can be applied through there are different ways to get a residency permit. You can incorporate a company, either you can buy a property. If you have a job here already, if you're working for another company, then you also get a residency permit. And the most famous one, or like the most, the one that's gotten a lot of interest rate lately, that's the Web3 Talent Golden Visa program. So this one is a 10-year Golden Visa residency, which is for talented individuals in the Web3 industry. There are more perks to this, I would say, than the normal residency, because the normal residency it renews every two years, I believe now. This is a 10-year one. You pay it once, and then there are no requirements to re-enter the country every 6 months, which for the normal residency visa, you have to be in the UAE every 6 months. For the golden visa, that's not the case. You come in once and you can enter again in 2 or 3 years, or whenever is fine for your schedule.
Any other wisdom we can share with regards to residency permits?
Yeah, it's just, I think that's mainly it. Having that Emirates ID, getting your medical done. It's a 2-week process, I believe. 2 to 3 weeks it takes to get a normal residency permit.
And note that Emirates ID is required for most activities. And as a manager of a company, you must have an Emirates ID in order to open a bank account. Without it, it will not be possible. Banking is as hard as anywhere in the world, but we are able to open bank accounts for our Web3 and crypto customers. If you're unregulated business, we can do that. And if you're a regulated business, you need to get your license first, and then you can go and apply for the for banking. So depending where you are in the process, but there are some really friendly banks and really friendly off ramps that can deposit your sold crypto into your bank account literally within an hour. Really, it's really great right now. I'm actually quite happy. But always use regulated exchanges. We recommend CoinMina. They do very well in terms of fiat off ramps. Don't use a friend of a friend. Don't use cash shops because a lot of people are getting scammed. A lot of people getting scammed. If you live in the marina, you see some cash shops. I do not know honestly how they operate. They've received multiple fines and they still operate. Clearly, the business is good, so the fines is just the cost of doing business. And the manager is probably a cousin who the owners don't like very much. So if he ends up in legal troubles, the owners are okay with that as well. So that's my only explanation how people would run such a business. And the corporate tax registration. We have taxation now for all the companies, onshore, offshore, free zone, whatever you name it. If you're a company in the UAE, you are subject to corporate tax law. If anybody says that free zones are tax-free, that is not correct. If anybody tells you that financial free zones are tax-free, that is not correct. Everybody is subject to the corporate tax law. However, there's a lot of ways you can optimize for your taxes. You can either apply as an SME and enjoy a tax relief for revenues up to 3 million dirhams, or you have so many expenditures, you have so much expenditure on your employees and offices that it all subtracted from the revenue. So you actually don't pay the taxes because the way your accountants done the returns is that you don't owe any taxes. But everybody owes taxes eventually, wherever you are based. And even some individuals, even if an individual you're doing a business, then you would be subject to corporate tax law. So you have to be very, very, very careful. Do not believe people you're not subject to taxes, because that might not be the case. You need to double check that always. Another funny rumor we have, if you're a UAE resident, if you live in the UAE for 90 days, you get a tax residency certificate. That is not the case. You have to be in the UAE 183 days to get a tax residency certificate to show to your authorities, let's say in Spain, Italy, or other countries, that you are not subject to taxes there. You are subject to taxes in the UAE. For individuals, it is 0, but you have to spend 183 days. Oh, ongoing compliance. Ala, do you want to cover that? That's your favorite subject.
It is. Yes. So besides of all the necessary steps that we mentioned before, during your company incorporation, you relocating or your team relocating to the UAE and obtaining residency for them, there are multiple ongoing liabilities and compliance requirements that you will be responsible for. And among these requirements, as Irina mentioned, there is a corporate tax registration. So you need to bear in mind not just that you will have to pay taxes, but you actually have to register and obtain a tax number, and there are certain deadlines for this. So you will have to, and if you do not register on time, of course you will get a fine. Then you will need to have your accounting done. You will need to have your annual returns audited. Obviously you will have to comply with AML, CTF regulations. for regulated entities as WASPs, these are different requirements, but the general requirements apply to all the entities. Also, you will need to comply with data protection laws, privacy laws, employment laws. If you have a team based here in the UAE, you will have to handle their residency. You will need to get their insurance, health insurance done. This is mandatory for an employer in the UAE. And of course, you will have to comply with crypto marketing laws, which is something new in the crypto world and in the UAE. These new regulations were recently introduced by the Dubai regulator VARA. If I'm not mistaken, it's effective since October last year. And what we have to emphasize here that these regulations are applicable to everyone, not just regulated WASPs. So if you want to market virtual assets or any virtual asset activities for the UAE residents, you will need to comply with these regulations. And you can only do it for licensed WASP or on behalf of that WASP. It is this is the quite hefty, quite complex regulation. There are of course certain exemptions which apply. Thank you for the next slide. So these exemptions are applicable to journalists, to educational content, of course, to private conversations, as long as it's you do not receive certain consideration for this content. And what is important to mention here that influencers, key opinion leaders, they are not exempt and they have to comply with these regulations as everyone else. So simply if you are a quite famous influencer in the virtual asset space and some crypto project wants you to market them, you need to ensure that that company is licensed in the UAE by VARA. In case you market company which is unlicensed, there may be quite hefty legal complications for you.
Yeah, and also the events. If you're running a crypto event, there's certain steps you have to comply with, and your attendees and also the people who exhibit, they have to comply with that as well. So you have to be quite careful. We have a lot of crypto events in the UAE. I'm waiting to see when VARA will start getting very strong on this. The interesting thing is the marketing law applies for the entire UAE, not just Dubai. So you cannot set up a crypto event in Sharjah and start shilling tokens thinking you're outside of the jurisdiction of VARA. That is not the case. VARA partnered with Security and Commodity Authority. That is why the law is outside for the entire UAE. Oh, fines, penalties, right. So there are different types of penalties that can apply. We have disgorgements of profits, fines up to 10 million, and even referral to general prosecutor if the crime is quite serious. And in the Emirate of Dubai, the fines are higher, 20 million for individuals, 50 million for companies, and even the annual revenue at 300% of profits gained. So you need to be quite careful there. We have some really good questions about the token issuance. Shall SPV obtain a license? It depends where are you planning to issue your tokens. If you're planning to issue your tokens in the UAE, then yes, you need to have certain meet certain requirements before you issue your token. It depends what the token is, right? Is it a security token? Is it a utility token? Is it a stable coin? However, in general, if you're planning to issue a utility token, we don't recommend to do it in the UAE. There are much better jurisdictions. You can set up that SPV and do it over there. That's a very good question. If you like, we can send you more information on that, how to do it as painless as possible. Yes, you can spend 6 months talking to a regulator to issue your utility token, but why do that if you can do it in 3 days elsewhere and still take advantage of the UAE jurisdiction? We can send you information on that. There was another question. If you tokenize a non-financial asset, like for example, art or watch, will that token be a security? So I don't believe so. However, some people, especially who work for regulators, don't agree with me, and they believe that it is a security. So there is no precedent, but the leading thought is that if you tokenize anything, there's a fraction of anything, that this becomes a security. I don't agree with that, and we had discussions with that on ESCA. However, if we have a client who want to tokenize a watch, we will push very heavily to have that exempt if we can. But at the moment, nobody is quite interested to tokenize non-financial assets. Property is for sure. The property, if you're tokenizing a share of a property, then you need to get regulated. We talked about a free zone company buying and selling crypto in the UAE subject to 9% corporate tax. So the profits that you receive from the activity of buying and selling will be subject to 9% corporate tax, subject to first $100,000 is tax free. Then there might be some deductions, for your salary, for your office, and then what's left, that will be subject to taxes for sure. Unless you're planning an SME regime, which is the revenue of 3 million dirhams, all of that is untaxed. So simple answer, yes. Complex answer, yes, but, and there's all sorts of elements you have to meet, like everything in law. Nothing is straightforward. Very good questions. If you're an entrepreneur, I'm guessing individual, living in Dubai, but you have your time, you divide your time across different countries, what are your tax implications? The question is, the answer is, where are you tax resident? You have to be a tax resident somewhere. And if you decide that you're tax resident of the UAE because you want to fall under zero tax regime, then you need to spend 183 days. However, let's say you're from a country that doesn't really care about collecting your taxes. Let's say you from a jurisdiction, I don't know, Kazakhstan. I mean, do they know you live in Dubai? Do they care you live in Dubai? Do they care that you're traveling all over the world? So there's law and there's a practicality of it. So you always, our job is to tell you what the law is, but then of course there are practicalities that might not be as severe. However, if you're a US citizen, Uncle Sam will come for your money irrespective of where you live. Or let's say you're a European national, EU would want their taxes, so you have to be very, very careful that you have your paperwork in order, especially if you plan to return to EU. When you're launching a token, what's the most important thing to have in mind? Ala, do you want to get that? If I'm launching a token, what do I need to have?
Of course, the first step is to assess the regulatory, the regulatory environment in the jurisdiction where you plan to do so. As Irina mentioned, in many countries, you may find out that it's not the best place to issue your token, and you may to think about establishing an SPV elsewhere where the regulations are quite crypto friendly, especially in terms of token issuance. So first of all is regulatory assessment. Secondly is defining your token characteristics. So based on what your token functionality is, this may also affect the jurisdiction which is the most suitable for your token issuance. If you plan to issue utility token, there are multiple options for you to consider. If you're planning to issue security token, this may be more complicated and you will have less options. If we're talking about a stable coin or payment token, depending on the jurisdiction, the term can vary. For these type of tokens, there are very less regulations available globally at the moment. So this will really depends on what the type of token is. And of course, you need to think about establishing the company which will be responsible for token issuance. Do not issue a token under your name and do not offer it to your investors under your own name, because this will This will provide another legal implications. It will arise unlimited liability to you. So there is always recommended to set up a token issuer, an entity which will be responsible for your token issuance and sale. And if anything goes wrong with your token, or if regulations change in the jurisdiction where your company is, you can always close that company, and you will not be personally liable with your own assets, with your house, with your car, and your own funds for anything what can happen with your token down the road.
Yeah, SPVs are always recommended for token issuance, even if you have entire Web3 structure. If we haven't answered a question, feel free to email us. We'll email you back. If you have any particular project you want to discuss, but it has to be a project in mind. It can't be, I'm thinking issue something. Then we will happily speak with you. We have a lot of resources on our website. Guide of Doing Business in the UAE can be very helpful. And you can request a free consultation on your particular project. Send us a white paper or a deck or a website ahead of time. We will review it and we will break down the entire regulatory path of all the 7 steps where you need advise you on the best jurisdiction and the best regulator and support you there. And if any questions come up, do send us a message. I would like to welcome as many entrepreneurs as possible in the UAE. I believe it's one of the best places to live and to work and to build your Web3 and crypto business. But I'd want you to find out that as well. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here.